Welcome. I'm Tammy Beldew, professor of drawing at the University of North Carolina, Asheville, and the Drawing Discourse exhibition coordinator. And as part of our programming with the Drawing Discourse exhibitions, we invite our students, our advanced drawing students, to choose 3 artists from the exhibition that they would like to have a further conversation with. And our last artist of this 17th annual exhibition that we are going to visit with today is Catherine Tafur. And to introduce Catherine, I have student Lois that I'll turn it over to you, Lois.
Hey, hello, okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Lois, and I'm a drawing student here at UNC Asheville. Catherine Tafora is an accomplished artist that's been featured in 49 exhibitions since 2003, with 6 of those being solo exhibitions, including her 2003 exhibition at the National Museum of Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender History. Catherine Tafora Split in 2009. Chord Paintings by Catherine Tafora in 2012. Catherine Tafora Regime in 2017 and Catherine Tafora Yearning to Breathe Free in 2019, and Catherine Tafora Flight in 2023. She was born in Peru and moved to the United States with her family as an adolescent. She graduated with her BFA from the Cooper Union for the Advancement of Science and Arts. Her works are inspired by her identities and experiences being queer and an immigrant in the United States. In 2019, Tafora had her publication featuring her collective works from 2003 to 2019 titled Catherine Tafora Yearning to Breathe Free, published by Miles Contemporary. Tafora continues to create works inspired by her queer, multiracial immigrant identities that explore political violence and oppressed and marginalized identities. We are so honored to have you here. And we'll go ahead and turn the screen over to you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Lois. Great intro. That says a lot of what I was going to say. Um, but let me just go ahead and start sharing here. Okay. Hold on. Okay, here we go. Um, okay, so I'm just going to go kind of through my work from like very early on, from 1998 on. Um, And I know this is a drawing class, but you're going to see a lot of painting. For me, painting is just an extension of drawing, and a lot of what I've done is painting. So this first slide, this is the drawing that's actually in the show. So I just thought I'd put it up there to remind people which one it is. Um, so early work, I'm going to start with like some art school stuff. Most of my early work was about my sexuality and coming out, queering bodies, gender fluidity, etc., and my feelings about feminism. So these are just examples of the early paintings. We have a lot of lesbian couples, a lot of like the whole butch femme dynamic going on. And I'm going to show you just the different artists that have influenced me through this. So, for example, this is got my earliest painting, 1998. Partly inspired by this Dali painting here. Um, Looking at Titian's Venus of Urbino for this androgynous figure on the left, just a similar kind of composition. And Francis Bacon, who I'm a big fan of, and this I even have the Bacon painting in the background of the painting there in the middle on the wall. Um, And back then there haven't been that many images of lesbian representation, but one thing that I always got a kick out is these pulp novels of lesbian romance, which were always kind of messed up. Sometimes, like a lot of times, written by men, and they always kind of showed women as evil or unnatural or so on. But I liked referencing this type of imagery in the painting. And I made a lot of figures that were ambiguous in terms of sex and gender, ambiguous genitalia, things like that. These are all pencil drawings. And back then, also, the way I would draw was much more photorealistic than now. And I looked at a lot at Caravaggio. I like the chiaroscuro kind of lighting. And all the way on the right is also Cindy Sherman's. Kind of like I like the cinematic kind of feel of her photographs. Growing up in Wilmington, Delaware, back in the 80s and 90s, there wasn't much art to see, and this was like before the internet. So a lot of what I would see would be like going into bookstores and it was all Renaissance, Baroque, or Impressionism with the books that I had access to. Um, One thing I was obsessed with was Saint Sebastian because he's such an icon for gay male art, and I always wondered what, like a lesbian version of Saint Sebastian would be. Here's another one. This is the death of a mermaid, kind of thinking about that whole Saint Sebastian theme. That's a city in the background. More of a Saint Sebastian, and also I was raised Catholic in Peru, so a lot of Catholic imagery makes its way into my work. Um, and this is three stages of becoming a woman. We have on the left, this is a triptych. The left figure is the umbilical cord going into the mouth. So I think of that as more of a self-contained unit of like before coming out and becoming a part of the world, and you're just kind of in this womb. The middle one is like a birth or a baptism. And then the third one is whatever the state is after that, which is uh, kind of like being prey. Thus the deer antlers. I think of this as like holding back a cannonball, and the feet are chicken feet. I like using the chicken because it's a bird that can't fly or is not been given the ability to fly. And then again, some things I was looking at classical Greek sculptures, Laocoon and his sons. I believe this is in the Vatican. And Matthew Barney, who I find to be such a strange, great artist. I like all the weirdness of his characters. Open Arms. So this is another one where I was actually I had a kind of an angry feminism back in my youth. And this is over here an image of the Virginia Tech gunman, and I was thinking about that kind of extreme anger and trying to channel that into my work. And the electrical outlet in the vagina is just to show, how people take, like you take the energy, but you're not giving back. And then this one is the last fish, which, for me, the fish is the symbol of basically Catholicism for me. And I wanted to make this painting where I wanted to basically kill the fish to kind of get rid of that whole mentality, which to me contributed to a lot of like internalized homophobia. So I made this like piece where a lot of these figures are taken from the frescoes of Michelangelo's Last Judgment. You can see. And on the right here is like a collage that I made before the painting as like a study to before I do it. The octagon, that's like UFC octagon. Like my brother does these mixed martial arts and he's a big UFC fan. So I was thinking of this whole thing as like a big fight, basically, to kill the last fish. Okay, so that was kind of my early work. And at some point, and all of it was kind of facing inwards and trying to figure myself out. And at some point, I started to kind of face outwards and see, what's happening in the world. And as a result, my work became very political. One of the reasons why my work is so political is that I grew up in Peru. And the reason my family moved to the US is because at the time there was a guerrilla uprising of a Maoist communist group called Sendero Luminoso, which is the Shining Path in English. And they really like terrorized the country, and they were trying to overthrow the government, and they started bombing Lima, the capital, which is where we were living. So as a little girl, I, would wake up in the middle of the night with bombs shaking the house, etc. So my earliest memories were sort of this fear of, these quote communists. And later in life, I kind of was trying to figure all of that out. So here is, all right, this is the assassination of Osama bin Laden. And I remember when this first happened, this is based on the photograph of the Situation Room, which is all of these people watching the scene as it was unfolding when they actually captured and killed him. And I was just kind kind of fascinated, but also really disturbed at all of the celebration that was happening here. I'm in New York City, and 9/11 was huge. Like, I know so many people who lost family members on 9/11. So when Osama bin Laden was killed, there was so much celebration, and I found it just kind of disturbing to be so happy about the death of a man, um, however horrible he was. So let's see. So on the upper right, the detail here is taken from Masaccio, the expulsion from the Garden of Eden, as a symbol of loss of innocence. And of course, the arm of the figure in the center is taken from Michelangelo's Creation of Adam. And on the bottom right, this lumpy figure taken from Philip Guston. I think of this that figure as sort of a blob of a person doing nothing. And really the heart of the painting is the figure with the one eye screaming in the center. And you see the purple shapes behind are the Twin Towers. And also this happened while Obama still had this like magical halo about him where, he was elected and people really kind of um at least around here thought he was it's almost like a messiah. So I put the presidential seal behind his head as if it's a halo. This is a portrait of Hillary Rodham, who is now Hillary Clinton. And this is the picture that it's based on. This is from when she was very young. She was still Hillary Rodham. And what fascinates me about her is to me, she's like this ultimate symbol of corporate or capitalist feminism. And to me, also a symbol of the limits of feminism when tied down by capitalism. So this um, little scene, which is a race, is sewn onto her mouth. And to me, the race symbolizes that kind of dog eat dog mentality of capitalism, where somebody wins, but people always lose. And that, to me, it kind of hampers how far this type of feminism can really go. Okay, so then this is Revolution, which is based on the Arab Spring that started in Egypt in Tahrir Square, and in 2011. And I'm really interested in just the ideas of revolution because of what was happening in Peru when I was growing up, because that's what people were trying to do is like overthrow the government and have this revolution. So at the time, I was fascinated to see, like, is it possible that they can have a peaceful revolution? Like, how is this happening? So I obviously think about revolution made me think about Russian constructivism. And here we have one of Rodchenko's trade union posters, early Russia. And, I could have chosen any of Rodchenko's things. They all have this kind of look of like these flat shapes, it's red arrows and dots. And I took that aesthetic, again, looking at figures like Lacan. Um, and what I did was I was think of like how to make these figures look kind of heroic. So I combined, sports figures with classical Greek sculpture and with these protesters that are throwing rocks. And I came up with these different poses that I put together and ended up here. All right, let's see. And then thinking about, communism and socialism, I was thinking about workers' rights. And back in, I think it was in 2013 this happened. This painting is 2014. It was in Bangladesh, Rana Plaza in Savar. It was the single worst global garment industry disaster in the world. And over 1,000 workers died. There was a factory that made clothes and made fabrics that collapsed. It was just structurally not sound. And the exploitation of workers there was terrible. So, this is like the images of the building itself. You can see how the structure collapsed. So you can see the different bands of color that mimic that. And one interesting thing is, since it was a garment factory, they had these spools of fabric. And so when the building collapsed, they would run down these spools and people would slide down like these colorful slides out of the building. So I put that in the painting. You can see at the top there, the figure sliding down. And of course, color-wise, I was just using the colors of, late capitalism, pop, advertising, all of these ads that are, advertising the garments that were made with fabric from this place. And last, the logos of the different companies that were using this fabric in the background. And again, with the Baroque, this time Bernini, I was thinking of this kind of light, of like an angelic kind of light coming down. Okay, and this one is called Drone War. And Tammy, if you can keep my timing in check, I want to be able to get through all this. Drone War, one of the big things Obama did was like send a lot of drones to rural Pakistan and killed lots of people. So, always interested in like international kind of fighting. This piece, obviously inspired by Picasso's Guernica. And also Matisse's The Dance. I kind of liked how the color keeps your eye going around and around. And who I think is absolute genius, Francisco Goya, with his disaster of wars theories. You can see I took one figure almost directly from that. And Matisse again, all of these poses that I borrow from different artists. Okay. And then I thought about like what's happening with the art world. And to me, it's just kind of weird trying to be a part of this world, and it's so detached from things going on in the world. So this piece is titled White Cube, like the gallery is a white cube. You have Brancusi's endless column coming from the cube up, and all around it is complete disaster. Here you can see I put Brancusi's endless column there on the right, and below is scenes from Hurricane Sandy, because that's what was happening at the time. And I'm just threw in a few drawings. This is a drawing class. These little things that I was doing also that are kind of the feel of my political conscious. Lockheed and Boeing, these logos of like the companies that make weapons for the military. This is a list of people that were murdered by the NYPD. Okay, so then in 2016, so November 1st, 2016, my father died. And he was Peruvian. He's the person that brought us from Peru to the US. Worked really hard to do that. He died November 1st, and 7 days later, Donald Trump was elected president. So I went through this kind of mourning that was like also had this devastation on top of it of like Donald Trump having become president, who is so anti-immigrant. And one of the things that happened when my father died was I had been making these big grandiose paintings that I wanted to like feel historic. And I couldn't do that anymore. And I could just only be on my own making these tiny little drawings for a while. So I kind of went back to basics, and it was just pen on paper. So some of the first drawings I made. So Hillary Clinton, as much as problems as I have of her, this is her vote count. Majority vote, who didn't win. Bernie Sanders, unfinished. Well, sad with this bandage. And again, I also went back to this more hyper realistic kind of drawing. I feel like that's kind of like my base, like where I come from. So it's where I went back to, just to go back to basics. And this is a drawing of Donald Trump. We have the wall in the background and other walls. There's the ground where he's sitting is swastika in perspective, and that's DC in the background with a bomb going off. And of course, he's a TV guide, so he's got the glow of the TV coming from there. One of the things I was looking at, Goya's Colossus, this giant monster thing. Madman, this is another little one. The marks on his face are actually small swastikas and written down things that he said, messed up things that he said, Muslims, illegals, da da da. And this is tinfoil. The flag is made out of tinfoil. Just a few more little drawings that I was making. Arrival, this is a refugee. Refugee's arrival. This sewn up cut, this surgeon, a blind surgeon with the American flag in the background. Kind of how I felt, this woman ripping out this eagle, bald eagle. And Donald Trump has always been there. So I made this because I felt like people were acting like this was so new. Nothing like this has ever happened. And it's not true, So this background is from a diagram of a slave ship. And so to me, it's like this has always been here in the United States. Like now it's a little more open, but there it is. It's not, it's part of the history. So in that way, Donald Trump has always been there. This is a Muslim ban triptych. So he calls for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the country. These are refugees drowning. More small things, some things he has said. Another refugee there drowning in the middle. These are his supporters. Again, all the small drawings because that's all I could do at the time after my father died. This bald eagle eating somebody. And the only painting I did at the time really was this painting of Trump Tower. And I'm not like actually sure if the red figures are holding up the tower or are coming out from under it. It's I used a lot of gold paint on this. So then I started to expand from the small drawing and started doing more collage work with the drawing. So this is getting closer to my more current work. And these are MAGA hats in the background that I collaged together. And the figure is drawn on paper and then cut out and collaged on top of it. And I'm thinking of this like as a kind of a rage, like an enraged dog trying to piss on the MAGA hats, basically. And this figure is holding a hammer and sickle. I'm thinking about the communist guerrillas in Peru. The background is all golf courses. One of the golf courses is a Trump golf course, and one of them is the DuPont Country Club, which is from Wilmington, Delaware, where my parents went when we first moved to the US. This has a refugee camp in the background. I took out all the people and just repeated the tents. This is MAGA. This is again a MAGA hat lettering in the background collaged together. The snake is drawn with a Confederate flag pattern, and that's cut out and collaged on top of the pigment print. And so then I was still drawing, but it started going bigger. This is the largest drawing I've ever made. This is each panel is 16 by 20. The whole thing is over 6 feet tall. And this is based on the Tower of Babel. And also Tatlin's Tower. So you see Tatlin's Tower at the top because I think of it as like the failures of a communist utopia, basically. And then the Tower of Babel at the bottom. I like having airplanes because it not only reminds me of 9/11, but it's how we came to the US. It's how most immigrants arrive is by airplane. Let me see. Here's some details. The background is paint on Yupo paper, and all the foreground is all drawn. The tower's actually cut out, like the black paper is cut out and pasted on top. These figures are, we have the conquistador figure with a crucifix as an oar. These are refugees in the water. and we have riot police. Basically, in the boat, it's based on Washington crossing the Delaware, but it's like this Trump-like figure, capitalism with the police and the conquistadors is all kind of a part of the same oppressive system. And you can see the bottom waves. The water was painted on a separate paper, cut out, and then collaged on top to make the different kinds of lines. I kind of like the edge of collaged paper as a very hard kind of line, a drawing line. There's another detail there. See. Okay, so the present. So a lot of the work that I do now is about decolonization, and it's about basically coming from Peru, being an immigrant, and kind of holding that identity as like a queer immigrant. So I was looking back at a lot of Andean art, ancient Andean art from Peru before Columbus. And I grew up in Peru around a lot of this type of imagery. So I'm just showing a few things, a few figures just to show what that art looks like. A lot of these lines all around the faces, like the lines going down the sides of the face around the eyes, is something that repeats in my work a lot. And a lot of these graphic images with like the curly lines will also appear. And I was using gold as a symbol of the theft of the conquistadors stealing all the gold from Latin America when they first conquered. So it's kind of a symbol of the theft that's constantly happening to Latin America from around the world. And on the left, this figure, you can see the lines on the face. That's directly from Andean art. These are all gold backgrounds, which is hard to tell. It's hard to photograph because the gold is so reflective. The tumi is a big symbol in Peru. You see it everywhere. The Incas use this sort of ceremonial knife, they think, for like some kind of sacrifice, but they're not totally sure. This is a kind of shape that you see in Peru all the time. And I used it here with the airplanes, and the sword in the center is Pizarro's sword. That's the kind of sword that they used. And another sort of feminist symbol, the braids becoming the fallopian tubes. This is all a uterus shape, again on gold. And the condor is also a big symbol just for all of Latin America, I think, but big in Peru. And here you have all of the Incan art. In the wings, there's a revolutionary with a rifle on the sides. The central figure is Atahualpa. It was drawn and quartered by the Spanish. Now this is getting much more contemporary. So a lot of Andean art featured these godlike figures that were in this frontal pose holding staffs on the sides. And I kind of like that pose. So I use that pose in this piece. This piece is called Pachamama, who is the Mother Earth of the Andean mythology. And I used a lot of like sort of gold watercolor and acrylic paint mixed together and painted on Yupo so that it would kind of separate and create these lines and bubbles. I took acrylic pen and used like pointillism to do a lot of rendering. And the background is actually imagery of placenta. And I took these different images of the textures of placenta and collaged it together and repeated it to create this overall texture in the background. And to me, the placenta represents like a rebirth. And that is the Willendorf Venus in the center where the vagina should be. And this is me also like experimenting with different types of mark making on different surfaces. We have, I used acrylic, salt, watercolor, things, mixing together the paints that shouldn't be mixed together, and then layering with drawing and painting combined. This piece was actually shown at the Brooklyn Museum recently. It's called Suburbia. So this piece is about my discomfort with suburbia when we first moved here and my culture shock. So we have the suburban house, and spilling out are these figures that are Incan or Andean, and they're voguing because of like, to me, that's like queer representation. They are made out of placenta, and they're drawn with white pen and black pen on top. The bulls represent Spanish conquest as well as capitalism. It's a bull market. We have riot police rising out, and the top is a Andean god figure. Here, the Andean god is made out of a mirrored paper. This is like I pasted this one graphic from Peruvian textile, but there's a lot of figures like this of like these weird flying gods. And of course, this one has a hammer and sickle to harken back to the Maoist communist guerrillas. And here we go. There's a close-up of the placenta making a figure. I think this figure's doing like a weird death drop. Okay, and then I did this series where I was thinking about the theft of natural resources from Latin America, and mining is still a big thing. And if you go on Google Earth and you look down on certain parts of Peru, you actually can see these giant, giant mines, open pit mines, where they've carved into the mountains. And as I was looking at these, I kind of thought of like the Pachamama, the Mother Earth, as like a being in pain. So I see these as like figures in pain that are being carved out. So I would go to these shots and like sort of clean them up, zoom in, cut, collage them together, clean them up, and then find this figural form. This is Constancia, which is the name of the mine. So I found this figure. I added the arms and legs are placenta with the veins are acrylic copper paint because this is a copper mine. Now, all the drawings around it are based on Andean art, like a lot of the smaller drawings that I've made, finding figures within this like watercolor that I put on the background. Here's some close-ups. A lot of these are also umbilical cords, or those twisted lines. Some of the Andean figures are holding AR-15s, just to like kind of connect present violence, political violence, to past violence. See a lot of hammers and sickles. The Andean cross, these stepped figures represent like in Andean mythology, the sky, the earth, the underground. The hanging dogs are there because the first protest that the Sendero Luminoso, the Shining Path guerrillas did was at an election where they actually killed dogs and hung them from lampposts. And it was weird. Everyone thought it was really weird, but it stuck in my head as this image of like the first thing they did before they moved on to do some really extraordinarily violent things. Okay, so this is the Yanacocha mine. It's a gold mine. And you can see on the right the actual shot of it from above. And this one I took a little more liberty and started like taking parts of one section of the mine, putting it elsewhere to kind of make this like double face thing happening here with this one part of the face is condor and one part is puma. And here again, all pen drawings, cross-hatching, small detailed pens. This is Antamina. It's a copper and zinc mine. And this one I like because it's the black and white is the mine allowed me to make a stranger looking figure with this elongated neck and this kind of exaggerated pose. And all of the drawings on it of the Andean faces. I like the making the lines on the face that echo the lines of the mine. And in the background, so this is a crashed car. My studio is in Queens in Long Island City, where there's a short walk away is this industrial section that is full of auto body shops. So if you walk through, you see all of these cars that are mangled. that have been in car accidents. So I would go around and photograph them. To me, they symbolize the failures of modernity, basically. And here's another one. This is the Morococha mine, which is a silver mine. This, I took only a section of the mine to make this piece. And again, you see all of the car crashes in the background. And finally, this is the piece that was in the show. This is Tintaya Jaya, the Tintaya mine. And you can see on the right is the full mine. This one I felt like I kind of saw the figure right away. And I just used the full mine without like doing too much to change it. And it just felt like a giant right away. You do see these like squiggly dark lines throughout the mine. Those are actually carved out of the paper, like they're holes in the paper. So I printed this out as a large pigment print, and then I just went in and carved out of it again. Um, and then I just added hands and feet. The head is directly from a piece of Andean art pottery. Um, and then all of these little figures are just made up. I had a lot of fun just making up these figures. A lot of these spirals. You will see. Let me see if I can find some. Okay, so these symbols where you see three steps and a curly line above. You see this in a lot of Andean art because it represents a type of like fertility. So the steps are represent the terraces in the mountains, and then the curly line above is the water that goes on it, and it provides food. So it's all about sustenance, fertility, and a lot of times it's also male and female. So I kind of like having both, just as a genderqueer person. Um, and again, the airplanes, a lot of these figures with headdresses. A lot of figures with holes, like there's a lot of Andean pottery that have these holes in it. Mhm. Here we go. Yeah, you see more of the steps with the curly lines. We got a lesbian couple over in the upper left there. And finally, so this is like just a peek into the next phase, which is I've been using a lot of dirt, like earth. I'd go to the park here, Prospect Park, and just get dirt and filter it and mix it with acrylic medium. It's kind of like a way of wanting to reconnect with the earth. So I'm trying to mix that into what I'm doing. And I'm still sticking to a lot to just works on paper, drawing and like a little bit of painting, and it feels right. It feels like I think before my painting felt a little more separate from my drawing, and now I feel like they're both kind of working together more. And I think that's it for my presentation.
That was amazing. Thank you,
Thank you. Thank you.
Catherine. Yes, that was awesome. Peek into the inside of your studio. Lois, actually, I'm going to have you unshare now, Catherine, so that way
Yeah,
we can
okay.
see you.
Let me see if I can find my cursor. Okay, there we go.
Excellent.
Okay.
Lois, I'll let you start with questions.
Okay, so one of my first questions I have
Hmm.
written down was I was just kind of thinking about how a lot of your work is based on, I would say even your earlier work was based on like a political and like not like how your identity was reconciling with the political nature of the time. And I guess I wanted to ask how, I guess you did kind of just tell us, but how you reconcile what you saw in the past with what you're seeing now in the present, because especially your
Hmm.
work in 2011 and then 2015, 2016, and how it was a very, very on like a bit on the nose kind of expression of your work, but I was really liking how clear the message was, I would say. So how
Hmm.
you passed to now.
I'm glad that was really clear. Clear. I mean, I'm sorry. The question is like how I reconcile the present with the
So
past. Hmm.
yeah, I guess so. Like, basically, what I was asking is like, how is what you saw and you put in your work in the past, how are you doing something similar with what you see happening now? Like
Mm.
that's what I'm trying to
Yeah, so I mean, for me, what is happening now is with ICE and with Trump, there's so much erasure and shame for Latin American immigrants. And I find that sort of celebrating my Andean heritage is more important now. And having this Andean art in there is, I think, a big response to that. Um, and, there are certain things like the AR-15s, I think, come from like my present in America. And just I feel more the visibility of it being very obviously Latin American based. But also not purely Latin America. I mean, this is like I feel like it's obviously like we have a Western trained artist making these, right? Um, so I think just being like very open about my Latin American heritage is kind of important now, and it wasn't as visible in my artwork before as it is now. Yeah, does that answer the question pretty much? I mean, I think like when I think about what ICE is doing, it's just like a complete nightmare. So yeah, I've been really like kind of honing in on this Peruvian side of me.
Yeah, that answers my question. Thank you.
Sure.
Catherine, so one of the things that I've always loved about drawing is it doesn't seem like it's hemmed in with material usage. And you definitely celebrate the ability to use lots of different materials. And can you talk more about why you feel compelled to do that and how, even to the newest work that you gave us a peek at with the use of dirt. So non-traditional materials, traditional materials. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an awesome ability to be able to combine that many different things and still have the work feel cohesive. So I'd just love to hear more about your choice of materials.
Sure, sure. Yeah. I mean, I feel most at home with a pencil or a pen. That's just because, like, since I was little, that's just always what I've been drawing with pen or pencil. Um, and I think that, like, w when I'm really getting into this imagery as I'm making it, I feel like the image guides me in terms of what it wants to be. And sometimes it might not be enough when I have the pencil or the pen in my hand. And I think, well, what could make this line be darker? What could make this line be more fluid? What could make this shape stand out more and pop or whatever it is that the image needs? Um, I think also from looking at so many artists in art history, it kind of leaves the door wide open as to what I can do. I don't have to just get a pen or some ink. Like I could use like absolutely anything. So, I'm like, well, I like these images. Why don't I just print them out and cut them out and paste them? Or like, well, I mean, there's watercolor and acrylic and oil and they don't mix, but maybe the non-mixing is like the thing that makes me could get me to have this type of line, or like I'm, making this drawing and I think like the viewer should see themselves here. I'll just use some mirrored paper
Mm.
or like what if it reflects the light? Like how do I make this much more shiny? And so, and things like, like I want to make more work that's about the earth and my connection to it. Why can't I just get some earth and do it? So it's really kind of driven by what the image needs and just conceptually what I want it to be. And so when I approach it that way, I feel like it kind of always ends up being right because the reasons are right. So it's not experimentation for the sake of it so much. It's experimentation to try to get to the core of the concept or the image.
Excellent answer. Yeah, yeah, that was wonderful. Lois, do you have any more questions, or should I go ahead and ask another one?
I was gonna ask about like your experience in undergrad and like specifically like how much you remember of your senior year and how much what you did in your last year of college influenced your direction for like the next couple of years post grad. I was kind of really curious about that because I'm kind of in that position right now. So I have questions about that.
Sure, yeah. So I went to an art school that didn't ask you to declare a major or a concentration outside of just general fine arts. So I spent art school kind of taking every kind of class. So I did some printmaking, art, sculpture, design, film, photography. And in the end, like, I ended up back with drawing and painting, which is how I started. But it was really good for me to get that experience of everything else. Um, Honestly, when I graduated, I was really confused. I had no idea what kind of artwork I wanted to make. Um, and it was I feel like it's such a strange time of your life, like your early 20s. I feel like I was just still trying to find myself. I had like, I had not been out for very long. Um, and then the artwork on top of it, it was just a lot of like grappling with identities and my own kind of like mental health having come out of like white suburbia at the height of the AIDS epidemic. It was a lot. And I think that it took me a couple of years to really be able to hone in and figure out exactly what I wanted to do. Like it took me a couple of years of just kind of being on my own and just kind of being okay with myself. To really get my artwork to a place that felt genuine to me. So I think a lot of it, the schooling is important, but it's also like um, being in a place where you're comfortable with yourself. For me, that was really big in kind of allowing me to be able to make really authentic work.
Thank you. That was
Sure.
Okay, I have another question. Why do you feel so connected to appropriate historical artworks in combination with political commentary?
That's a good question. Why? I don't know. I mean, like when I study art history, I really love seeing artists talking to each other. I really like, seeing Picasso going to Goya and so on and so forth. And um, it's just it's source material like any other source material, but such interesting source material because artists do such amazingly interesting things. And when an artist, I think, is like a genius and makes up these great forms and these great figures, like Goya, like it's just sticks in my mind so much that when I draw, it's just like these images kind of naturally come to me, and I think like with classical, Baroque, Renaissance art, I looked at that stuff so much as an adolescent when I was growing up that I think that was like really built in this foundation. And when I would draw back then, growing up, it was all realist drawing, and I was kind of trying to mimic this type of form because that's pretty much all I knew. Um, so that just kind of became a part of my DNA. Um, yeah.
Excellent. We are just so lucky to have had this conversation with you today, and thank you so much for being willing to do this studio visit and to share your work with us through the Drawing Discourse exhibition. And I do like to always ask, was this the first time you've applied to the Drawing Discourse exhibition?
Yes.
Okay, congratulations. Getting in on the
Thank
first
you.
try. Yes, excellent, excellent. Well, thank you. And I would like to remind anyone watching to feel free to give us a follow on Instagram for Drawing Discourse. And thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.